Personal computers have been around for over 41 years. Computer component manufacturers and sellers have made several technical advances to allow the average consumer to design a computer to their needs and desires. However, many people lack the knowledge of what is even inside a PC, let alone how to build one. In this video, we will show you how to build a personal computer as well as explain each component and what it's responsible for. We'll start with the case. Now, the case will determine the size or form factor of several components used in the PC. It will also determine the airflow used to cool the PC, cable management, and further expansion of internal parts. For this project, we'll be using Corsair's Carbide Air Series 540. It is a large case that allows for more than enough airflow, as well as plenty of room in the back for cable management. The next step will be installing the all-important motherboard. The motherboard is the base circuit board where almost all components inside the computer connect to in some way. It is important that you handle the motherboard with extreme caution. One static shock could cause it to short and render the entire motherboard useless. So it is important to make sure you ground yourself to remove any static charge from your body. It is also at this point where you should consider your options of CPU brand. Typically the choice is AMD or Intel, but we'll cover that in the next segment. For this build, we decided to use the MSI 970 gaming motherboard. Based on its reviews, it is both reliable and stylish for cases with Windows on the side. The next piece, and the most important piece, is the Central Processing Unit, or CPU for short. The CPU is a silicone chip with a multitude of metal pins covering the bottom. The pins receive electrical signals from the memory portion of the PC, which we will cover later, and processes instructions which make all of computing within the machine possible. The CPU we are using in this build is the AMD 8-core FX 8350. To make sure there are no mistakes, find the marker on the corner of the CPU and match it with the marker on the corner of the CPU slot. Once the small lever on the side of the slot is lifted, the slot should allow the CPU to slide right into place without any force being applied. Then you simply pull down the lever, like so, to lock the CPU into place. And just like that, the CPU is ready to process. Now, you've probably noticed these 4 empty slots to the right of the CPU. These slots are for random access memory, or RAM, that allows different instructions to be sent to the CPU much faster. It is relatively simple to install, however the placement of the 2 sticks of RAM is critical to its functionality. If you have 2 sticks of the same type of RAM with the same quantity of memory, they should not be placed next to each other. Instead, place the sticks with 1 space in between, like so. Brand does not particularly matter when it comes to RAM, however it is recommended to buy it from a reliable company. Now with the motherboard nearly complete, we can begin installing it into the case. The motherboard's form factor is a full ATX, which is luckily compatible with this case and has the appropriate screw holes. Then installing the motherboard is as easy as screwing in these 9 screws. After the motherboard has been secured on the standoffs that keep it suspended above the case, the most difficult part of building the computer can take place: installing the CPU heatsink. When a CPU is in use, the electrical signals move at such a rate that it heats up the CPU. They heat it up to such a temperature that the CPU can get too hot and damage itself. This is where the heatsink comes in. Large heatsinks can cool the CPU using airflow, however for this build, we will be using water. This works in 2 parts, the heatsink itself and the radiator. Once the heatsink is secure, we can then focus on the power supply. The power supply is obviously what controls the flow of electricity to each component of the computer. Typically, a 24-pin connector will supply the main power to the motherboard, as well as a smaller 8-pin connector. This then leads to the installation of the hard drives. Most PC cases include a mount or slot where the hard drive can be placed. Once it is secure, you can then attach a SATA cable that connects the hard drive to the motherboard, and the power cable supplies power to the drive. Finally, we can install the video card. This component is typically not needed in laptops and small devices. However, for most modern PCs, a video card is necessary. Installing one is as easy as locating the PCIe slot located here, unscrewing the protectors on the back of the case, placing the video card in the slot until you hear a solid click, and then screwing it into place. This video card requires its own power, so we will be connecting it to the power supply using a wire. Lastly, you'll need to connect your Ethernet cable, keyboard, mouse, and monitor, plug it into the motherboard, and now you have a working PC. Congratulations.